Hi, it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I want to be more consistent from now on. Now that I'm back, I want to start a series of Shakespeare reviews, basically reviewing Shakespeare's plays. Now, for my first Shakespeare review, I want to look at Titus Andronicus, one of Shakespeare's early tragedies, said to be written between 1588 and 1593. Titus Andronicus is a play that many critics scoff at. It was very popular in its time, but as critics began to analyze Shakespeare's plays, uh, many have been dismissive, even now, towards Titus Andronicus and its artistic qualities. The famous American literary critic Harold Bloom says he finds no artistic value in this play. He mentions the scene where Titus has Lavinia take his hand between his teeth, his hand that's been cut off, and says that no play with a scene like that in it can be taken seriously. And he believes that the play is basically a parody of Christopher Marlowe, that's not to be taken as a serious tragedy. And it's an understandable criticism. It's understandable to look at Titus Andronicus and say, this is just too ridiculous, it's too broad, it's just garish and violent, it doesn't have the depth of some of Shakespeare's other tragedies. And while certainly I wouldn't put this up there with Othello, Macbeth, or Hamlet, the great tragedies, or King Lear, and Antony and Cleopatra. I believe those are the five great tragedies, deemed to be the five great tragedies by Shakespeare. I think Antony and Cleopatra is part of that group. But while I wouldn't say it's as great as those tragedies, I do think it's a very valuable work because it shows Shakespeare learning how to be sort of tragedist. I believe that's the word, tragedist. Let me look. Yeah, it's basically his sort of training ground towards his greater tragedies. And you can see hints of what will come later. You have Moore, Aaron, who, while different than something like Othello, what Shakespeare is doing with Aaron in this play is is similar to Othello because the play does confront the idea of interracial marriage and racism. Of course, Aaron is a much more evil character than Othello. In Othello, when he went mad or insane with jealousy, wasn't quite as evil as Aaron. And Aaron, I do think, even though he is a more evil character than Othello, and he is evil, he's also a complex character, but I'll get to that later. Uh, and also, of course, you have the idea. Also, you have the theme of revenge, which, of course, will come later in Hamlet. And also, you have an old man going mad, a once powerful man, once dignified man, brought to nothing, similar to King Lear. Of course, also Tamora is somewhat of a lame Macbeth figure, in that she is really the main. I would say she is in some ways the main villain of the piece. So you could also argue Aaron is in a way, but I think Tamora is sort of the main villain, the main villainess of this piece. Basically, Titus Andronicus, as I was saying before, is a revenge play. It's all about how revenge begets revenge, violence begets violence. It's a very straightforward play, thematically, I think. And of course, it's also about misplaced revenge. Lavinia, Titus's daughter, is let's go back. The The play begins with Saturnius. Give me a moment. And Bastinius, who are two brothers who are vying for the position of emperor in Rome. The play takes place in Rome, and Titus is the general who brings back the Goths prisoner, Tamora. Tamora is the queen of the Goths, and Aaron is her lover. Of course, he also brings back her two sons, Chiron and Demetrius, and then Marcus Andronicus, who is Titus's brother, announces that people have chosen Titus as the new emperor. And of course, Titus comes back after defeating the Goths, and Titus has Tamora's oldest son, Alarbus, killed in order to avenge the deaths of Titus' own sons. Of course, that's what begins Tamora's quest for revenge against the Andronici. And Titus, he says he's unfit to rule. He doesn't want the throne. And he supports Saturnius, who is then elected. And then Saturnius says to Titus that he's going to marry Titus's daughter, Lavinia. And Titus is okay with this, but Lavinia is already engaged to Bassianus. Sorry, I can't pronounce this. Who doesn't want to give her up? And Titus's sons are in favor of Bassianus's claim to Titus's daughter. And then, there's a fight, and Titus kills his own son, Mucius, who he deems is a traitor because he's going against the emperor. And then Saturnius marries Tamora. And Tamora advises Saturnius to pardon his brother, Bassianus, and the Andronici, which is part of Tamora's plan. She doesn't want anything to happen to Titus or the family until she does something. She wants to be the one who takes revenge on them. And then the plan to take revenge against the family is basically Chiron and Demetrius rape Lavinia. They kill Bassianus, and they cut out Lavinia's tongue and cut off her hands, which I think is one of the most gruesome acts in Shakespeare, if not the most gruesome. And Titus' two sons are framed for the murder of Bassianus with the help of Aaron. Aaron is the one who leads them to this hole in the ground where Bassianus' body is, and it lays gold there to look like that's a reward for killing him. And the two sons, Marcius and Quintus, are sentenced to death. But Aaron tricks Titus into thinking that the emperor will take Titus's hand in return for his sons, meaning that cut off the hand. And Titus gets his hand cut off, and then he realizes his two sons are dead, that their heads have been chopped off, and he finds out Lavinia, what has happened to her, and that's sort of what drives him mad, completely over the edge. And Titus is sort of a prototypical. Prototypical. Let me look. Yeah, sort of prototypical King Lear. In that he is this sort of once powerful, dignified man who just loses pretty much everything. I mean, not to the extent of King Lear, where he gave up his power to his daughters, but Titus doesn't really Titus does really fall a great height in this play. Uh, he's basically made a fool. He's basically made a fool because he gets his hand cut off. His sons have been framed and murdered. Um, and once that happens, it very much becomes not about a noble general versus this queen of the Goths. It becomes this very raw, primal story of hatred and revenge. And as I said, misplaced revenge, because Lavinia, what they do to Lavinia was completely unnecessary, completely cruel. They wanted to get revenge on Titus for you know killing, for having tomorrow's son killed. Then they should have gone after Titus. But that's the thing, right? You don't you don't kill Titus. You attack his heart. His heart area. That's what we attack from for Spider-Man. That's what they do. They attack his mind. They attack his heart. They bring him low. And a lot of the play after these initial acts of violence is really about Titus. Uh, we just see Titus not slowly going mad, but we witness his madness. It's not. It takes a while for him to finally enact his revenge. That's basically near the end, almost the end of the play, where he finally kills Tamara's sons. He bakes them in a pie. And and feeds them to Tamara and Saturnius. And of course, Anthony Hopkins played Titus in the 1999, I believe it was 1999 film version of Titus, directed by Julie Taymor, which I do recommend if you're a fan of Shakespeare on film, if you're fascinated by the way directors adapt uh, Shakespeare's work to screen. It's a very fascinating adaptation. Uh, and of course, Anthony Hopkins, who played Hannibal Lecter, it's funny to see him bake these two guys in a pie. I mean, darkly funny, but funny nonetheless because he became famous for playing a sort of a cannibal who would do something like that. And of course, I love Titus' speech just before he kills Chiron and Demetrius. It's one of my favorite speeches in the play. And I think it's somewhat satisfactory for the audience, for the reader, because Chiron and Demetrius are really kind of vile, empty people. They don't really. I don't feel there's much depth to them, which isn't a sort of criticism of the play. It's just they're really awful people, and you're sort of glad that they get killed. I mean, I think that's the most fascinating thing about the play is that it kind of makes you root for these horrible things to be done. It appeals to our sort of animalistic nature. That we sometimes root for violence, even though we know we shouldn't. And I think that's why it was a pretty big hit back in its time. It was really Shakespeare at his most audience pleasing, particularly in this mode. As time went on, I think his tragedies became more sophisticated and made uh, less of a crowd, less crowd pleasing. Not to say Titus Andronicus isn't a sophisticated play in its own way. Has very sophisticated language, but it's also a very raw, as I said, raw, you know, very brutal play. Yeah, the structure of the play is just very much. I don't think it's as sophisticated a structure as Shakespeare's later tragedies, and it is somewhat meandering. You do feel that a lot of the play is taken up by just Titus just kind of being mad, and we don't, I think, get enough of the our characters during this part, except for what happens with Aaron and him having a child by Timora, which I wish was a bigger part of the play, and I wish their relationship, we got a little bit more of that. We do see them together in the early parts of the play, but I feel that that relationship never had a payoff. I mean, I guess you could say the birth of the child who was black, and who Aaron wants to hide away, and wants to put another baby in its place so that baby can become emperor, a white-skinned emperor, and protect the baby from Chiron and Demetrius who want to kill it. This section of the play, when this happens, this really shows Aaron's humanity. Aaron is a very, as I said before, a very evil character, but the birth of his child does show his humanity. It does show that he's possible of some compassion, even though I think Aaron, he denies it. I think Aaron does not really want to embrace his humanity. Even though he does show it, you tell that there is that section of the play where it's probably the best speech in the play, where he talks about the bad things he's done and how he would his only regret is that he couldn't do anything worse, or couldn't do it 1,000 times more. Yeah, like Lucius, Titus' son, says, "Art thou not sorry for these heinous deeds?" This is when Lucius, who was banished early on in the play, goes teams up with the Goths, and they're going to attack Rome, similar to Coriolanus, and they have Aaron, and he says, art thou not sorry for these heinous deeds?" And Aaron says, "Aye, that I had not done 1,000 more. Even now I curse the day, yet I think few come within the compass of my curse, wherein I did not some notorious ill." And he talks about, "Ought have I digged up dead men from the graves, and set them upright at their dear friend's door, e'en when their sorrows almost was forgot, and on their skins, as on the bark of trees, have with my knife carved in Roman letters, Let not your sorrow die, though I am dead." And I think that speech really shows us what type of man Aaron is, and that it's not a very pleasant picture. It does show that in some ways, that Aaron, while he, while he does love this son, other than his love for his son, he's pretty irredeemable, uh, or that he himself does not want to be redeemed. He loves being a cruel, evil person, and I think that's what makes him such a vivid character, made the most vivid character in this play, uh, is because he's very aware of who he is and what he wants to be. And yeah, I think he's probably one of the best villains in Shakespeare, because of that contrast between being so evil, but also showing this love towards his child. It's a very complex. I think Aaron's a very complex character, probably the most complex character in the play. course, I also may want to see more of the relationship between Tomorrow and Saturnius. So more of the Lay Macbeth relationship, which it kind of foreshadows. With Tamara being the one who's really pulling the strings in a way, similar to Lay Macbeth. Um, would like to have seen more of their relationship, and also uh, see more of Saturnius, how he reacts to his brother's death, because, from my knowledge, Saturnius isn't really a villain in the story. He's not part of the plot to take revenge against Titus and his family, even though even though he does kill Titus at the end, and gets killed by Lucius, I believe. I don't really think Saturnius is really an evil character in this play. Um, yeah, and as you see, the picture I used to illustrate this video is Laurence Olivier, who played Titus in 1955, I believe. And what would I give to see a film to see Laurence Olivier play that part on stage or in a film? I think Laurence Olivier is, in terms of Shakespeare, a brilliant Shakespearean actor. Um, I think Titus. I remember in an interview he mentioned that Titus was really difficult for him to play, and I remember in an interview on the Richard III DVD, the Criterion Collection, in an interview with Kenneth Tynan, I believe, the theater critic. Olivier said, "How many times can you go, oh, oh, oh?" I think he's kind of implying that Titus was a monotonous character, in a way. And in some ways he is. He's not as deep a character as Shakespeare's other tragic protagonists. He has some great speeches, I think. As an actor, he provides a lot of juicy moments for an actor, but I don't think he's as complex as someone like Lear. I don't think he's as sympathetic as Lear. I mean, he is sympathetic in his own way, but only, I think, because of what happens to Lavinia. I think that's. I think we feel more sympathy for what happens to Lavinia in this play than we do Titus. Though you could say that about Lear as well with Cordelia, but I think Lear, just watching him make these kind of horrible decisions, and we know that in a lot of ways he is at fault for what happens to him, but we still sympathize with Lear, I think, uh, because it is so horrible, uh, you know, the way he's manipulated in his old age. Um, I don't know how old Titus is supposed to be. Um, I don't think Olivier was that old when he played it. Yeah, I think he wasn't yet 50 when he played it. Um, and I think Titus is somewhat of an older man, definitely an older man's part. Uh, I can't, I don't think you can sort of be an actor in your 30s and play Titus. No, because as children, yeah, it's not specified how old he is, but it's definitely like Lear. I think you have to have some time to lead up to it if you're a Shakespearean actor. I mean, not to the same extent as Lear, because I think Lear does require a lot of life experience to play that. I think that's sort of like that's sort of like the final stopping point if you're like a Shakespearean actor. If you start young, Lear is sort of like big one, or the last big one, um, in terms of how anguished he is. Um, but with Titus, yeah, you definitely need to have a lot of wrinkles, not a lot of wrinkles, but you need some years on you, and you have to, I think, definitely have a lot of skill to make a part like this work because if you don't, it won't work, and that's the same with a lot of Shakespearean roles. You have to have the right skill set. You have to know how to progress that character and how to progress that performance through the different stages of the play. And if not, it's just going to come across as one note or monotonous or just surface level. Um, yeah, so Titus, while he's not as great a character as Shakespeare's our tragic protagonist, I do like a lot of his speeches. Again, particularly the one before he kills Chiron and Demetrius. Of course, when he's begging for his son's lives. I also really like that. Um, Marcus, who in some ways is the most noble character, the most straight shooting character in the play. He also gets that great soliloquy. I guess you call them soliloquies, or you would call that soliloquy when he finds Lavinia, her arm, her hands cut off, her tongue cut out. He has that great, speech where he's just, let me find it, just a moment, where he's like, who is this? My niece that flies away so fast. A cousin, where is your husband? And yeah, it's a wonderful contrast between just this horrible imagery, what we see in our head, what we see like on stage or on screen of this woman, young woman just defiled and her hands cut off, but contrasted with this very um, this beautiful expressive language. And I think the whole play is fascinating in that regard, in that a very it's a very cruel play. It's very bloody. It's not very subtle, but it has this great use of language. And you can say that about a lot of Shakespeare's. Say that about most of Shakespeare's work. His language, but just the contrast between the sort of, I think, more, I wouldn't say pulpy, but the more crowd pleasing, the more just messiness of the violence. It's an interesting contrast between that and the sophistication of the language. And I think kind of that's one of the great things about Shakespeare is his contrast between pleasing the audience, having a lot of bodiness and violence, but doing it in a way that feels very sophisticated. Of course, he would become more. His strategies would become more sophisticated after this. The end of the play is weird because, well, usually his tragedies end with someone addressing the audience or summing up stuff. This is weird because it feels like it goes on a little bit longer than it should after Titus is killed. Feels like there's maybe a little bit too much speechifying um, at the end that needed made to wrap up just a little bit quicker. Um, I do like the moral dilemma of Lucius having to take care of the baby, promising Aaron that he won't kill the baby. I think the play sort of leaves it ambiguous as where Lucius will keep his promise. Uh, the Julie Taymor film gives us a little bit more of a positive ending in that regards, or a more optimistic ending. She really takes the play seriously. She she really thinks she sees artistic value in it. Sees that Shakespeare was trying to say something. I don't think what he's trying to say is as deep as his other plays, but he's definitely making a statement about revenge begetting revenge and just the pointlessness of violence, which makes it a very relevant play. And even though I understand now some of the things in the play seem maybe a little bit too absurd to be taken seriously, I think Shakespeare's intention is to go very over the top and to have maybe some kind of dark humor or, take your hand in my teeth. But he does it, but I also think you can take what happens in this play seriously. That is about, it's just about the horrifying things that people can do to each other. Uh, and sorry about that. And also how nothing really good comes out of it. There is no justice in this play, I think. Yes, bad people do get punished, but it doesn't stop anything. I don't think it stops, violence. It may stop the chain of violence that was happening in the play, but I don't think Shakespeare ends the play on a note of, oh, people have learned and things are going to be better. I think Shakespeare is probably saying that another chain of violence will happen and it will happen through the ages, and it has. So yeah, that's pretty much my review of Titus Andronicus. I don't know which one I'll do next. Maybe All's Well That Ends Well. That's the one I'm reading now. Uh, so yeah, I'll maybe try to do a written essay on it first, or write down some more notes so I can be a little bit more articulate. I apologize for my meandering or stuttering. I know it can be sometimes difficult to listen to me. I find it difficult to listen to me. So anyway, yeah, that's my review of Titus Andronicus. If you're into Shakespeare and haven't read this yet, I would recommend it. I do think it is a fascinating early tragedy from Shakespeare. So, yeah, I'll see you later.